So we have a weird situation where both sides feel like they're winning, meaning that the left, especially after Charlottesville, believes that President Trump has been marginalized and he's ready to go, and things could not be better for their side. It's like a high week for them. On the right, none of us liked any of this Charlottesville stuff. And again, I say us, even though I'm not on the right, but in terms of this conversation, I'm lumped in the same group. What we see is, events are going pretty well in the country. The stuff you can actually measure is heading in the right direction. But here's my provocative thought of the day, and I want to see if you agree with this. All right. My provocative thought of the day is that the anti-Trumpers would prefer bad things happen to the country right now, right away. I'll say it again. I believe the anti-Trumpers actually want bad things to happen to the country, and not because they want bad things to happen to the country. It's because they need to be right. They need to be right that whatever flaws they find in our president, and by the way, I see mostly, I see a lot of the same flaws in terms of the way he, riles people up. Those are flaws. But they absolutely need things to go wrong. And I find it uncomfortable to live in a country where half of the people are rooting against the country, not in explicit terms, but it's so obvious to me that they would prefer it. Don't you think that if the stock market went in the toilet tomorrow, that you would see dancing in the streets? So many people would come to my Twitter feed gloating and saying, see what I told you, stock market's down. Hey, great day, stock market went in the toilet. Hey, people are out of work. I told you, ha 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 ha, LOL. There are no jobs. We had a terrorist attack. A lot of people died. LOL. I guess you're wrong, Scott. Ha ha ha. It has reached a point where, for a while it felt like unpatriotic to not even give your newly elected, legally elected president a honeymoon period. To me, it feels unpatriotic to not give a newly elected president a honeymoon period. Just flat out unpatriotic. All right. But now it's something different. Now it's something evil. There are people who are hoping for pain in the country just to be right, just to feel right. And I don't think that they process it that way. I don't think anybody's thinking in their minds like, I want the country to be destroyed. But let me ask you this. Is there anybody who's anti-Trump who has not had this thought when the stock market goes up? Do you think there's anybody who hasn't said to themselves, oh, shit, the stock market went up again? Do you think there's anybody who didn't have that thought? No, I don't think so. I think that everybody who opposes him is explicitly is the wrong word because they don't admit it, but somewhat obviously, I would say that people would be happier about being right than they would be unhappy about other people not having jobs. It is the level. What's the biggest thing that people are complaining about right now? If I could capture all the complaints about President Trump and put them in one ball, I guess it'd be two balls. So some of the complaints are his effectiveness, capability, chaos, all that stuff. So that would be one ball. But the other ball would be his empathy. In other words, does he care enough about the citizens of this country? Does he feel on the inside that he cares about them and is working for their betterment. So people are questioning that because of, the mass hysteria bubble. But at some point, questioning his empathy becomes a little bit ironic, because the people who question his empathy have simply they've evolved like the Gollum. You know the Gollum in the Lord of the Rings trilogy? He was that little creature who started out bad, but then just kept getting worse. Oh, Gollum. Oh. And he got worse and worse. I think the left started out as legitimate critics who were worried about racism, worried about, the good of the country, worried about social nets. I think that most of the left were good people interested in good things, ethics, morality, stuff like that. But now it's my impression that, like the Gollum, they have evolved from fairly lofty ideals to simply wanting to see to actually preferring high unemployment. Actually preferring that healthcare doesn't get fixed. Actually preferring that, business optimism falls. Preferring that we have, a terrorist attack or something. So I think that this legitimate caring has morphed and metastasized into this lack of empathy. So to me, let me see if I can make my case more crisply. If your concern about the president is his empathy, you need to check your own work. Because if you're not on the America team now with the guy who wants to make America great and half the country who, think he's moving in the right direction, if you're not helping, or let me put it this way, if you're not being part of the solution, you're definitely part of the problem. And if you sign up to be part of the problem, you can't complain about other people's empathy, because empathy would require you to work for the good of your fellow humans, to try to, make the country better in some way. So if you've got some ideas about what healthcare should look like, practical ideas, if you've got some specific thing you can do to, reduce racism, if you got something you could do to help, I'd love to see you help. But if the only thing you got going for you is, Schadenfreude, and you just want the people in power to fail so you can be right, that is not empathy. And if you want some real empathy, maybe think about what's good for the country right now. I have no problem whatsoever with protesters who want to make sure that our president stays on the right path. Even the president himself said in his latest tweets that protest is sometimes good. I forget his words, but, to retune or reset the country, sometimes you have to work through some protests to just, find balance again. Well, I love the way he said it. I forget his wording. But I think that's the case here. As much as I hate the fact that we had something that looked like a gigantic race-related problem, I can't feel bad about the fact that so many people were protesting in the streets against racism. All right. So in that case, I do respect and love the opposition, because they are a force for, a better impulse, a more free and inclusive and, good country. So there is a loyal opposition there that I respect and would prefer I prefer that they be there. In other words, I prefer the protesters exist because they are a counterbalance. It's part of what keeps the republic healthy, is that if somebody even looks like they could be a problem, people will organize to protest and form a counterbalance. So to the extent that President Trump's rhetoric has scared a lot of the country into thinking, well, maybe something bad could happen about racism or otherwise, then I think it's a perfectly healthy thing that people organize in streets just on the fear alone, just based on the fear, and just show the country that there's a lot of energy to make that not happen. It's a completely good stuff. But it can go too far, and if somebody gets killed, nobody's happy about that.